As our segment begins, Sherlock Holmes sits across from his old friend as the good doctor opens a very unique piece of mail.
Holmes? I've just received the most extraordinary letter. It's addressed to us both.
Letter?
Yes, it appears to be from the future. It's from the Abbey.
Westminster?
No. The Abbey Road, where we deposit our funds, when we're in funds. I hope you don't mind.
Please.
Dear Mr. Holmes and Dr. Watson, we thank you for vacating your premises at 221B Baker Street at such short notice and inconvenience. But among the pile of papers we found in a cupboard were your Abbey passbooks. Dr. Watson, the balance of yours stands on the 30th of May, 1898 at £917. Mr. Holmes, the balance of yours stands at £988. We are pleased to inform you that the accrued interest to May 30th, 1988 amounts in total to £100,000.
One must not underestimate the rise in the cost of living.
If you would care to call at your old stamping ground of 221B Baker Street, etc., yours sincerely, Campbell Adamson, Chairman, Abbey National Building Society, May 30th, 1988.
In 1988, as filming was well underway for Granada's adaptation of The Hound of the Baskervilles, Jeremy Brett, Edward Hardwicke, and the entire filming crew took a break from the hectic shooting schedule to record a special message for the Abbey Building Foundation and National Bank. The exact reasons for the creation of this segment remain a mystery to this day. But this wasn't the first time that the Granada team and the Abbey group had crossed paths, and it all had to do with the address, 221B Baker Street. When Conan Doyle first decided on Holmes's physical location back in 1887, he deliberately chose 221 because, in reality, the then-existent numbering system of Baker Street did not go beyond 200, thus securing what Doyle believed would be a safely fictitious setting for the dwelling of the great detective. However, in the 1930s, street numbers in the area were reallocated, and the block from 215 to 229 was assigned to a building known as the Abbey House, constructed in 1932 for the Abbey Building Society and subsequent Abbey Bank. Almost immediately, the Building Society started receiving correspondence from Sherlock Holmes fans all over the world, and in such volumes that a permanent position was created within the society to deal with the incoming deluge of mail. The role was to be titled Secretary to Sherlock Holmes, and the position would continue to be staffed into the 2000s, replying to fans and well-wishers, usually with a typed letter, thanking them for their inquiries and informing them that the illustrious detective was hot on a case. During that time, the Abbey Group would embrace their newfound connection to a cultural phenomenon, selling Holmes-related merchandise, publishing books of Doyle's stories, and making other significant contributions to the fandom at large. In the wake of the popularity of the Granada series, the Abbey Building Group decided it would be an opportune time to create a special plaque to mark the legendary location. And what better Sherlockian celebrity to preside over the dedication and unveiling of such a marker than Jeremy Brett himself. The plaque, which included the iconic image of Holmes with deerstalker and pipe, read, 221B, Baker Street, Sherlock Holmes. Quote, "We met next day and inspected the rooms at 221B Baker Street, and at once entered into possession. A Study in Scarlet, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle." The marker would remain on the site until 2002, when the Abbey Building Group relocated to Triton Square. The plaque was removed during the building's refurbishment at the time and never reinstalled. Its whereabouts remain a mystery. But the endeavor would open the doors between Granada and the Abbey Group and might provide a clue as to the reasons behind the creation of this special presentation.
So, Watson, you see what this means?
Well, someone is playing some sort of joke.
No. We've been invited to invest in the future. I mean, the children out there in the street, the little urchins, the poor, the undernourished, the beggars, all the poor in our society.
It is asking a bit much of medical science that we should be around in 1988 to claim it.
No. Our memory may linger on. Or your writings may still be read. Who knows? Now, I suggest that we send Billy, our page boy, to collect it on our behalf. Or his grandson.
What a splendid idea. Do you think it would work?
The reasons behind the creation of this unique promotional clip remain shrouded in mystery. While the writing credit is attributed to Jeremy Paul in the opening sequence, very little has been documented about this oddity in the Granada canon. In his book, Granada's Greatest Detective, author Keith Frankel posits, "Never commercially released or even transmitted, the reason for the existence of the case of the Abbey treasure remains unknown. But as it ends with a caption card expressing, quote, 'Love from the Granada production team,' it is perhaps fair to surmise that this sliver was only ever intended as a personal message between the two parties." What is known is that the Abbey National did harbor a sincere fondness for the great detective. And just a few years later, when a campaign to erect a statue of Sherlock Holmes on Baker Street began to gain momentum, the Abbey Group offered to fund its creation. And as a result, in 1999, a 3-meter-high statue entitled The Great Detective, depicting Holmes wearing his deerstalker hat and holding a pipe in a traditional pose made famous by Sidney Paget, was unveiled outside the entrance to the Baker Street Underground station. The Abbey Group even retained sculptor John Doubleday, who had previously been commissioned to produce a statue of Holmes for the town of Meiringen in Switzerland, and which stands below the Reichenbach Falls. The Abbey Bank even put together a Sherlock Holmes exhibition for the Festival of Britain at Abbey House as far back as 1951, assembling an incredible recreation of Sherlock Holmes's rooms in Baker Street. According to The Spectator, everything is here for the student of Holmes: violin, hypodermic syringe, revolvers, handcuffs, and provides not just a shrine for the connoisseurs of Holmes, but a deep pleasure for the student of the late Victorian period. This exhibition would change hands a few times over the decades, but can currently be seen as a permanent fixture of the Sherlock Holmes pub in Charing Cross, London, having remained virtually unchanged since the 1950s. So, whatever their connection to Granada, the Abbey Group's roots in the world of Sherlock Holmes run deep, and perhaps shine a bit of light on the reasons behind the creation of this interesting footnote in the Granada canon. Before we move into the conversation portion of the podcast, we would like to extend a very special thanks to Sherlockian scholar and collector Stefan Weishaupt, who was kind enough not only to provide us with this rare piece of Granada Sherlockian ephemera, but also has granted us permission to share the full video on our YouTube channel. So, if you haven't yet, please do head over to YouTube and check out this fantastic little rarity. And again, a sincere thanks to Stefan for allowing us to share it. And with that, let's head over to the armchairs, where Luke awaits us for a long overdue conversation on all things Holmes. Meet the quick mind that restlessly combs through the smallest of clues as it roams. From initial confusion to triumphant conclusion, my friends, here we have Sherlock Holmes. That is the Study in Scarlet limerick by Asimov. And I don't think we've read that one before, but since I never filmed that story and we mentioned it here earlier, I figured no time like the present.
My friends is a great transition if you just need a couple of syllables.
Well, it's a really good first limerick for the book because, it doesn't really have anything to do with Study in Scarlet, but it's a good way to start the limericks.
Yeah.
But hey, we're back. It's been a while. If I sound a little under the weather, I've been a little sick since we got home from shooting the movie. So if I'm stuffy, I'm still in the recovery way, but feeling mostly better. And we wanted to get a podcast out ASAP so everyone would know we're still amongst the living.
Yeah, and it's good to be back.
Yeah. Well, and I guess real quick, speaking of the movie, I'm sure most everyone knows the reason for our absence. We were making a movie, which we're calling The Vast Lonesome. And which I guess we can now announce we've finished phase 1, or at least principal photography on.
Yeah, that's a pretty big deal for us. Yeah.
Absolutely. And frankly, it was quite an adventure. I'm not sure how much to go into here.
I think all we can say is we're going to have one hell of a commentary track when this movie's done because boy, oh boy, did we get up to some adventures.
Yeah, frankly, some pretty incredible setbacks, but
yeah,
we got it done. And honestly, it was probably the most difficult and challenging thing I have ever undertaken in my life. And that is kind of saying something, but also at the same time, the most rewarding. And, at the end of it, we got a movie and it looks like $1 million. It looks amazing. So, congratulations to everyone who worked on it and you, Luke, for some great photography work.
Well, and thanks to everyone who worked on it. I think we also have to thank our podcast listeners who stuck with us while we've been shooting, and especially the ones who've supported the movie, even financially.
Absolutely.
We cannot thank you guys enough for standing by us, helping us make this dream come true. We hope we don't let you down.
Yeah, well, and I've been sending updates to everyone who's been supporting the film. And I think, in theory, we'll share some on the Sherlock feeds at some point. But it was an amazing adventure. And I think one thing that we should say here is that we were actually able to incorporate a few tricks and lessons from the Granada Sherlock series into the movie. Not to give away too much, but we did utilize the old steam and train whistle trick from the Solitary Cyclist to make it seem like there was a railroad nearby.
Yep.
I'm trying to think. Was there any other things
we
did?
There's plenty. This is going to be like a hide and seek for Sherlock Easter eggs and props and, Granada Easter eggs even.
Oh, yeah.
There's even some sleight of hand. There was one listener who saw a picture of ours who thought one of our characters resembled Moriarty, which I think wasn't on purpose. But yeah, there's a lot in there.
Yeah, if you look carefully, you'll probably see a devil's foot bottle here or there. You might see, some other relics peppered in every once in a while. No, it was great. And truth be told, we still have reshoots to do and pickups and, of course, all the post-production stuff. So still a long way to go. But the first phase is done, and it was the hardest part. So, we almost have a complete movie in the can, and it feels pretty good.
Yeah, there was actually a tool we got to use on this movie, which I wasn't sure existed anymore anyway, because back in the 50s and 60s, there was a big thing called mirror boards, which you would use to reflect the sun when you're shooting outdoors. And our assistant camera, Kayla, actually came to set with one because she knew I was trying to mimic some of these old movies. So we actually had a 4x4 mirror.
Yeah.
And I felt very much like, the spirit of Peter Hammond was on set. So I really fell in love with using it too.
Absolutely. Great tool. And it saved us in quite a few instances. So
I do think we need like a window though next. We need to be able to shoot through some glass. Well, we'll work that in somewhere.
Well, and I'm sure we'll be sharing more about the movie as we continue to progress on it. But for now, let's talk about the case of the Abbey treasure. There really isn't much information out there on this piece. The Abbey Group is no more.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, as of 2004, they have been absorbed by the Santander Group. And so there really wasn't anyone to reach out to about this. I think the biggest mysteries, aside from why this was ever created in the first place, are just exactly where and when it was filmed. If you listen to the dialogue, it's meant to be that they're not on Baker Street anymore.
Well, I've solved that puzzle.
Oh, you did?
He does say, it says the letter is dated May 30th, 1988.
Yeah.
So the first thing I did was I looked up release dates for the episodes, and the only one that was after that date was Hound of the Baskervilles.
Right.
And so I went back and I watched Hound of the Baskervilles, and the very end of the episode, when they're kind of wrapping it up,
Yeah.
it's that exact shot.
Is it?
They're sitting, yeah, it's like this other corner that they don't typically shoot into on Baker Street.
Hmm.
The fireplace would be just to the left of frame. So they're on that wall.
Okay.
When you see it in the Blu-ray version, it's, magnificent and glorious. And then when you watch this export of this Abbey treasure, it's so the blacks are just so crushed and it's so degraded that it's like impossible to tell where they are, but that's definitely where they are.
Yeah, that's probably why I didn't recognize it. I mean, I was kind of scanning the edges of the frame for, and you can see that like brown paper bag wallpaper.
Yeah.
So you know that it's basically on the Baker Street set. It's a little strange because, again, they're not even supposed to be on Baker Street in a weird way in this piece. But again,
Yeah, I mean, I have to admit that my first thought when I watched it was, what did I just watch?
yeah.
Because they get a letter from the future. They would have been out of Baker Street, but only in the future. So
Right.
I think it makes sense that they're still on Baker Street. It's just a very kind of strange.
I kind of like to think of it as an alternate reality moment, of which there are very few, but, time travel and
Yeah.
looking into the camera and breaking the fourth wall.
Maybe that gives us hope. There's still a world where there's like a Jeremy Brett crossover multiverse of Sherlocks. That could still happen.
It'd be wonderful to think that something out there like this exists, with the beekeeping scene or, other lost
Yeah.
bits that could exist. But, we actually have asked a few cast and crew members about this piece over the years because we have known about it, even though we only recently acquired it. And no one ever had any recollections of it. So, it's kind of hard to say much about it because no one even remembers it happening.
Well, I think we'll be stretching if we thought we could tease this out into a full episode. But
Right.
it's a great piece of this like remaining Granada Holmes puzzle. And it's nice to have it as part of the set.
Yeah.
What I was thinking was, though, when was it aired? Who was it for? Was it for bank employees? I have a theory about this, but I didn't know if you already knew.
Well, so, according to Keith Frankel, it was never aired. And it was never, broadcast or shared anywhere, frankly. So it was kind of like, well, what is the point of it? And because that tag at the end says "with love from Granada,"
Yeah.
he posits that it was just a private note, just like a little internal thing that they sent to the group. So I don't know if we'll ever know for sure.
Can I add my theory to the pile?
Yeah, please do.
Well, with my indie movie producer hat on, and knowing that Granada was low on funds for the Hound episode, is it possible this was like a private appeal to the Abbey Bank for a donation or an investment?
Very possible. I honestly, now that you say that it was the same setup as the end of Hound, I kind of just wonder if they're like, hey guys, we got about 2.5 minutes left on this reel of film. We're going to get this in one take.
Yeah.
And we're just going to like crank this thing out real quick because there is a kind of a flub in there. Like Jeremy Brett kind of flubs for a minute. And clearly they just didn't bother to do a take two. So, I think it was probably that. It was the end of a reel of film and they were just like, let's just grab this thing.
Even though they're just sitting, I like how Jeremy manages to work in a number of his signature mannerisms.
Yeah. Hand acting and
little finger gestures and yeah, definitely.
Well, and I think there are a few little tidbits of note. They mention Billy the Page Boy in this, and I could be wrong, but do they ever mention Billy the Page Boy in the series otherwise? Or is this the only mention of the character? I feel like there's maybe one other mention, and now my brain is drawing a blank. But there was that. And then, I don't know if you remember this, but if you think back to the Naval Treaty, there was a segment that Jeremy Brett really wanted to include from the story, but it was cut because, according to Michael Cox, it would have been too expensive to show what they were looking at as they rode through the city on a train. But this is the moment where Holmes makes mention of the children of London being little lighthouses, beacons of the future, and all this kind of stuff. And he really wanted it in the episode, but they cut it.
Yeah.
And I couldn't help but feel like they inserted a bit of that here. It's not the same words, but it's kind of a similar sentiment when he's talking about the poor and the street urchins of London and investing in the future and all that. So
it was neat. It was also kind of strange because, he's reading this letter from the future and Sherlock starts to talk about the poor and the needy as if we need to save them.
Right.
And then he kind of just says, send Billy or his grandson to collect our money. So that maybe, like you said, maybe it was on his mind.
Well, see, and I wonder what was on everyone's mind, including Jeremy Paul, because, he wrote this thing, at least that's the credit, he penned it. But when they actually mention the dollar amounts that are in their bank accounts, that's kind of interesting because, that must have come then somewhere in the canon before they did the priory school and got really rich, or you know what I mean? Like it's just kind of weird to hear like their dollar amounts in their bank accounts. Like it was.
Well, they're very similar.
Well, I guess they had to have a number to make an equation so that they could be like, in the year 1985, that would equate to this.
Right.
And if they're like, well, Holmes already has 100,000 pounds in the bank.
No, I thought it was kind of strange, but it was fun.
Yeah.
But going back to like the story of the actual production and actually the Abbey Bank, I didn't know that they commissioned the Sherlock statue, or they didn't commission it, but they
funded it. Yeah.
Did we take a photo in front of that when we were there? I can't remember.
I'm pretty darn sure I got a photo of it. Yeah.
We should look. I don't typically pose for photographs with statues, but we should see if we got one. We'll post it on the Twitter if we did.
What's funny too, though, is, we've gone back to that Sherlock pub so many times and we never knew kind of the history of the room there.
Right.
But now that we do, I actually kind of want to go back again. So.
Well, I think we'd go back again anyway, but yeah, for sure.
We usually do.
Yeah. We should say, I don't know if we've said this before, because I actually went to the Sherlock pub once without you when I took a trip to England.
Yeah.
And sometimes you go in and you can't get a table.
Really?
Because it's like private events and things like that. But
interesting.
They didn't say this at first, but you can just sit at the bar.
Ah, okay.
Downstairs. So there's like a side, you can go around the side and sit at the bar. So if you ever want to go in there and they're like, sorry, no tables, then just ask to sit at the bar.
Yeah.
Because it's worth doing. And then you can just walk upstairs and look at the display anyway. So definitely go if you're in London.
Yeah. No, good advice.
I think the last mystery of any of this is there a mystery of this last plaque?
Well, definitely. I almost called this episode The Mystery of the Missing Plaque, but...
Okay. Will this podcast descend to become a service for finding lost street signs?
Most of the research I did regarding the plaque, again, just came up totally empty. I mean, there's one or two people who have commented on it, but other than noticing it went missing, there's really no data about what happened to it. And frankly, I couldn't even find like a picture of Jeremy presenting the plaque, which would have been really nice. I think it was kind of like a private event, that kind of a thing. But yeah, no, if anybody knows the whereabouts of that plaque, I was almost kind of hoping it would show up in the second round of the Sherlock auction.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe a collector has it. Maybe it'll show up eventually.
Yeah.
And once again, I want to extend a heartfelt thanks to Stefan Weishaupt for sharing this clip with us. I searched high and low for this thing, frankly, for years. And Stefan was kind enough to place it in our hands. So everyone, please join us in raising a glass to Stefan.
Definitely.
Okay, well, let's take a moment to catch up on recent developments with a little of Mrs. Hudson's housekeeping. So there were definitely some developments in the Sherlockian world while we were away, and I thought, since this is a bit of a different episode anyway, this would be the perfect opportunity to bring our silent third man to the mic and discuss some of those recent items. So without further ado, let's welcome our producer, David, to the show. David, welcome.
Thank you very much. This is very interesting.
Oh my gosh, you're British.
For a British show, scandalous.
Well, and David, as most of you know, I'm sure, is responsible for much of what goes on behind the scenes of the podcast. And a huge part of that are the interviews. And we were going to save this as a surprise, but I think because David's here, we just drop it right now. David managed to get us some time with probably the second biggest interview after David Burke that was on our wish list.
Do you want David to tell us who it is?
David made it happen. So David, you make the announcement.
Okay, so I'm very honoured to announce our next interviewee on the pod will be Ms. June Wyndham Davies, perhaps the godmother of the series.
Yes.
Hooray.
Wonderful. Yeah. And I mean, it was so wonderful to speak with her. We spoke to her over a couple of days. And, how old is she right now, David?
She's 94.
94, yeah. So it was frankly, it was kind of a dream come true that this could happen. So looking forward to sharing that with you. This will be the next thing we release. Obviously, Hound of the Baskervilles is a big one, and that's coming. And we'll talk more about that later. But this interview will be next. And I think you guys are going to really enjoy this one. So I just wanted to go on record as thanking David and June for making this happen, because we're just so looking forward to sharing this one.
She had remarkable recollection and memory of the time of being involved in the show, and I think it could be one of our best interviews yet.
Absolutely. Yeah.
David, how pleased were you when she said yes?
I was overjoyed. I leapt over the sofa in a Jeremy Brett style manner, especially because we, similar to David Burke, we've been chasing this interview for quite a while and had a few knockbacks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it took a bit of cajoling and a bit of,
Bribery.
arm bending. Not that I go around bending arms of 94-year-old women, but we got there.
Yeah, we did it. And two, people might not know this, but June's caregiver and friend is Norma West, and Norma also an actress in her own right in many, many things, but she actually was in an episode of Sherlock Holmes as well.
The Master Blackmailer.
The Master Blackmailer. And so with luck, we'll be speaking to Norma in the future as well. But so when you hear the interview, I think there might be some places in there where Norma kind of chimes in. But yeah, so really looking forward to putting that one out there. Well, okay, so while we were away making movies, there were definitely some Sherlockian items that you were able to attend to better than we were, David. And one of those was the book launch of the reissue of David Stewart Davies' Bending the Willow, which we've talked about quite a bit. I realize this news is, a bit on the older side now, but I don't know. Tell us how that went down, David. What was the event like?
Well, so it was held at the BFI, which is sort of a well-known location on the south bank of the Thames, sort of right next to the National Theatre.
Yeah, British Film Institute, yeah.
Exactly. So I attended the day, got there early, and was lucky enough to be sitting in the bar before the event with David Stewart Davis and his lovely wife. So was able to have a quick catch up with them, as we hadn't seen them since we interviewed them back, a year ago, maybe a bit more.
Yeah.
And it was a bit of a shame because it was a smorgasbord of various book launches, DVD launches, etc. So Bending the Willow got lost somewhere in the muddle of all these various events going on, and there was also, I think it was a program of various films and chats on stage within one of the BFI theatres themselves for a Missing Believed Wiped special. Where they find old programs that were believed lost.
Oh, cool.
And that's where David got up on stage to talk very briefly about the book, but more about the interview which he shared with everyone at the event, which was his last interview with Jeremy Brett just before he passed away.
Yes.
Yeah. How was that to listen to?
Jeremy very much rose to the occasion. He didn't share the bit before the interview itself, where I think Jeremy was breathing very heavily and didn't sound very well, and had to collect himself before they started the interview. All they did was share the interview itself. So if you didn't know, you perhaps wouldn't have guessed that this was a man in the last stages of his life, ever the giver to anyone that asked, and his, to fans and so forth.
Right.
So it's quite interesting to listen to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the thing about entertainers. While we were shooting, actually, our gun armorer person, Chris Swinney, who worked on Tombstone, told us a similar story where Charlton Heston was on set, and he's like, I didn't even recognize him because he was like hunched over a walker, and his wife was holding him up, and they kind of like wheeled him out to where he needed to stand, and he's like, is this my mark? And they said yes, and then they took the walker away, and he just kind of like rose up into character, and he's like, I was like, there's Charlton Heston. It's like, so sometimes these entertainers, they know when they're on.
Yeah. Well, what else happened that day, David? I mean, like after the recording, what was the next thing on the schedule?
So we went, and there was the official book launch of not just Bending the Willow, but there's a book launch about the now lost Sir Arthur Conan Doyle TV series from, I believe, the 60s.
Right.
So there was that book launch. There was a DVD launch and various other things. So it was all Bending the Willow and the book launch of that was sort of mixed in amongst everything else, and but there seemed to be a lot of Bending the Willow fans there. David Stewart Davies was selling a lot of books and signing a lot of books.
That's great.
And he very kindly took a video for our competition winner from a few months ago, Brian Weaver.
Right. That was very nice of him to do.
Which we shared on our socials.
How was the food? Was there food there?
No.
No, really?
There was. If you wanted, there was a cupcake for everyone.
David Stewart Davies really promoted the food angle on his social media, so I was curious.
I missed out on a cupcake as well, because I was trying my best to get quick interviews with David himself and Chris Perry, who is the head of Kaleidoscope Publishing.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you were able to attend it. That was I'm glad you made it out. Speaking of books, I actually just yesterday had a conversation with Stephen Doyle over at Gassagene Books, aka Wessex Press, and he informed me of a few neat things, which I thought were worth sharing here. First of all, the next issue of the Sherlock Holmes Review just went to the printers, And this issue is going to be, in part, a celebration of the 40th anniversary of the Granada show. And it will include a reprint of an interview that Stephen did with Jeremy back in the day. But also, those guys spoke to a number of current Sherlockians about what the Granada show means to them and so on. And Luke and I are among those interviewees. So
Hooray!
that will be very cool to see how that comes together. We definitely had a great time talking with Stephen about the show. But wait, there's more. So Stephen also informed me that a few additional out-of-print books are coming back into stock, and among them is A Study in Celluloid by Michael Cox. So for those of you who have been writing in about the high prices of first editions, hold on a little longer if you want that one, because Gassagene Books will be putting that out soon. Also, the entire Sherlock Holmes reference library by Leslie Klinger is also getting reprinted, and those should be available in early to mid-spring. So lots of great news from Stephen Doyle and Gassagene Books / Wessex Press. I'm sure we'll be talking about all those releases more when they hit the shelves. I've been waiting to pick up the full reference library until they were all available. I'm just, I'm a weirdo like that. But if you recall, we talked to Leslie Klinger about that, and he said that the true collector should have both his reference library and his annotated Sherlock Holmes. So I'm planning to make room on my bookshelf for that when they come out this spring.
And I can borrow them.
Absolutely.
So speaking of the 40th anniversary, are we going to be doing anything? Should we do something? Have we already talked about doing something?
This is a secret, Luke. You're not supposed to talk about this yet, but
Okay.
we are planning a little something. We'll talk about it soon.
Dun, dun, dun. In the meantime, we are offering Volume 2 of the Relics again, as we're finally back from shooting the movie. We had removed them from our store while we were gone, but they're available now. They make a lovely gift. So if you head over to our website, sherlockpodcast.com, there's links to that, as well as our Etsy store, which has a bunch of new t-shirts, some familiar I Am a Breton shirts, along with a few new ones, which I don't know if people have seen. There's a Redheaded League shirt, there's a Gelder shirt, and there's even an I Heart Sherlock shirt, but it's a carbuncle instead of a heart because we're so clever. So check them out.
David, now you know what you're getting in your stocking.
You're going nowhere near my chimney, Luke.
Also on our website is the link to the location website, which David has been still updating, I think, to this day. But it's also a perfect companion for some end-of-the-year travel around England. So get out there and do it and send us your pictures. Send them to David.
Yeah, please do. We're always on the lookout for new locations we haven't discovered yet. And we love having the pictures up there that you send in.
Yeah.
Something other than Badsley Clinton, though, would be nice.
Yeah.
It's the easy one to get to.
True.
But, I mean, Stanton's not far. If you're going to Badsley Clinton, you got to go to Stanton Village.
Yeah, for sure. And I do have one Sherlockian purchase that I wanted to mention really quickly. So literally yesterday, I received in the mail something I pre-ordered many moons ago. It's a Blu-ray set from Severin called Cushing Curiosities, as in Peter Cushing. And it is definitely that. I'm not going to go into all the films in the set. Suffice to say that what is here is mostly...
It's very curious.
Well, it's mostly for hardcore Cushing fans. Movies like Tender Dracula and The Man Who Finally Died.
Those are great titles, though. Come on.
Yes, I know. Basically, all movies that have about a 3.2 on IMDb or something. But
those are usually the best ones. The most interesting, anyway.
Are they Hammer Horror?
No, not Hammer. But there are a couple of horrors, a couple of crime films. Frankly, just little footnotes in his career. It's funny because when you read the descriptions and it's like, the much maligned Bloodsuckers from 1971 with Patrick McNee and Peter Cushing can now be re-examined in its full director's cut. You know what I mean? It's like, okay. I watched the first 20 minutes of it the other night, and the first 10 minutes of it are an orgy scene.
With Peter Cushing?
Peter Cushing is not in the orgy moments so far. We'll see what happens.
Well, maybe we shouldn't spoil that. I mean, maybe that sells them DVDs, man. Come on.
But anyway, they've all been restored on Blu-ray, and this set comes with an incredible book, not just a booklet, by the way, a full book, which is just fantastic, by Jonathan Rigby, all about Cushing's career. But the biggest reason I picked it up is that it includes all the BBC Sherlock Holmes episodes that still exist on Blu-ray for the first time with new transfers. And commentary on many of them from David Stewart Davies. As David just mentioned, he was doing the commentaries on this stuff. And also others like Kim Newman. So it's It's worth it for the commentaries, frankly. But the Sherlock Holmes stuff is on 2 discs, and truthfully, I looked at a few of them, and they were mainly shot on videotape with some outdoor parts shot on film. As the BBC.
Yeah. So it's only going to ever be as good as it could be.
Well, that's just it. And sometimes when you get a restored movie like this, like for example, the BFI actually did 1984 with Peter Cushing last year. They put that out, and the film parts they restored, and they look amazing. And then the videotape parts, they just look like videotape. Nothing you can do. But this Sherlock stuff, it's not that. It's all pretty mediocre. I mean, I'm sure it never has looked better, but they definitely didn't restore the film parts. It's just an upscale to Blu-ray, I think. So not a colossal upgrade from the DVDs is what I'm getting at. So if you already have the DVDs, I don't know if I'd rush out and buy this. If you're a completist, they're good. I mean, they've certainly never looked better. The commentaries are good. It has all 6 of the surviving episodes. I think it's Study in Scarlet, The Hound of the Baskervilles in 2 parts, Blue Carbuncle, Boscombe Valley Mystery, and The Sign of 4. And there's an audio commentary between Peter Cushing and David Stewart Davies. It's like an interview.
That's neat.
And they set it to pictures. So it's like a 20-minute interview, which is nice.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much I paid for this set, but it's on the Severin website right now for $99. And I mean, overall, as a set of Blu-rays for a Cushing fanatic, it's totally worth the cost because you get 6 movies plus all the episodes plus the book. Totally worth it. But if you only care about the Sherlock stuff, hard to say. $100, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I just want to let people know that it's out there.
Yeah, that's good to know.
Well, okay, so not to bring things down too much, but there was actually some very sad news that happened while we were away, and I thought we should talk about it. The woman, Irene Adler, the actress, Gail Honeycutt, passed away. And this was a hard one because, well, I mean, we all love Gail, but we had been in contact with her a little bit over the last year or so in the hopes of getting to speak with her on the show, but she was just never well enough to commit to an interview. Though we did try, and David, you were the one who handled the correspondence with her. Did she give you any details? Did she ever say anything about her condition at the time?
No, nothing. It was a very short but gracious and kind email we had from her when I got in contact.
Yeah.
Just saying that she was too unwell to do the interview, to talk to us.
Yeah.
So alas, it wasn't meant to be.
Well, and when she passed, there were some lovely obituaries written for her. The Guardian, the Times. It was really nice to see, especially, when certain folks like Michael Cox, for example, seem to have been missed and forgotten in that way. But I was actually approached by the folks at the Sherlock Holmes magazine to write a small piece, but it was literally in the middle of the filming of our movie, and I just could not do it, and their deadline was immediate. So, again, that wasn't to be. Though, actually, I did talk to Adrian at the Sherlock Holmes magazine just today, and he said he was going to quote that very nice tribute that you wrote on our Facebook page, David. So look for that as part of the next Sherlock Holmes magazine.
There you go. She remains ever elusive.
Yes, yes. But I did pull a few things from the Washington Post obituary last night, and I thought we might just go ahead and share a little bit of that here in honor of Miss Honeycutt. This is from the Washington Post. Gail Honeycutt, an American actress who shed her Texas accent before building a 3-decade career on the British stage and screen, playing glamorous femme fatales and costume drama heroines while making headlines for her marriages to 2 very different men, died August 31st at a hospital in London. She was 80. Her death from an unspecified illness was confirmed by Simon Jenkins, her former husband. Miss Honeycutt, an auburn-haired Texan from Fort Worth, first gained notice for playing seductive women in 60s sitcoms like Beverly Hillbillies and Get Smart, and for portraying a mob-connected television star in the 1969 film Marlowe opposite James Garner. When she moved to London, she sought opportunities to demonstrate her range as an actress beyond her sexpot roles that she had been offered in Hollywood. Quote, "In California, I was going down the path of being built up on my looks. I feel I was very lucky to escape," she told The Guardian in 1974. Earlier that year, she had turned down an offer to play the female lead in the blockbuster screen adaptation of The Count of Monte Cristo opposite Richard Chamberlain. In its place, she took a low-paying part in a stage version of Émile Zola's novel, Thérèse Raquin, aiming to solidify her status as a serious actress. Quote, "The day I die," she explained, "I do not wish to be remembered as a lady Texan starlet with a good face." For years, however, Miss Honeycutt was known to British reviewers as the woman with, quote, the most luminously beautiful face on television, as Richard Last, a television critic of the Daily Telegraph, once put it. She was reportedly in line to be the first Bond girl opposite Roger Moore, who was succeeding Sean Connery in Live and Let Die, but she turned it down because she had recently given birth to her first son, and the part went to Jane Seymour instead. Late in her career, Miss Honeycutt returned to the United States to appear in the last 3 seasons of Dallas, the hit primetime soap that ended in 1991. By then, she had made a home for herself in Britain and was fond of the conservatism that she found in parts of her adopted country. Quote, no false fingernails, no false eyelashes, your hair can be messed up, she remarked. You'd never get away with that in Fort Worth. And then it goes on to talk about her marriages. She was obviously famously married to David Hemmings. One thing I didn't know, the Mamas and the Papas played at their wedding in an orchestra directed by Henry Mancini.
Wow.
So
Jeez.
that's quite a Hollywood type wedding.
Yeah.
But apparently Hemmings was a bit of a lunatic. I don't know, David, are you familiar with David Hemmings? I think he's probably a bit more famous over there.
No, not really, unfortunately.
Okay, but apparently he cheated on Gail Honeycutt with Samantha Eggar, who was his co-star in a movie, and they were divorced not long after, and then she married Simon Jenkins, who was a famous journalist and kind of an intellectual. So, of course, they mentioned highlights from her career, including, they did do a nod to Sherlock, in which they stated she also starred with Jeremy Brett in the 1980s premiere of ITV's Adventures of Sherlock Holmes as the cunning American singer and actress Irene Adler. And it ends with a quote from Miss Honeycutt from her autobiography, in which she wrote, I came to understand my own set of values and code of living through reading them, but they are not necessarily the norm in the rather exotic, complex worlds I have been a part of in my adult life. So yeah, I don't know, it's very sad to me, but she led a remarkable and successful life, and we wish her family and friends all the best in such times. I just wish we could have gotten to know her.
As a tribute, I think we could all go back and watch the first episode, but I also think people should go and watch Legend of Hell House.
Hell yeah.
I just watched that recently again, and that's always a fun movie.
I love that movie.
Roddy McDowell, Gail Honeycutt. I mean, definitely worth a look if you haven't seen it.
Absolutely.
I think, unfortunately, as we approach and go past the aforementioned 40th anniversary, we're gonna have to deal with this a few times coming up.
Yeah.
But I do think it's important to remember that though time will age the actors, time will not age their performances. And,
Right.
you know, how great it is that we're still able to see them and enjoy their work that they've left us.
Absolutely.
Definitely. And I'm just so glad we've been able to talk to a few of them and share that with our listeners.
Yeah. So while we have been making the movie, I must admit I had almost no time for matters Sherlockian, which, you know, to be honest, it felt like a kind of a void in my life. You know what I mean? So I'm kind of happy that we're here talking today and refilling it a little bit. One way that I have been doing that, though, is I did read a few pages from the autobiography of Robert Stevens. It's a book called Knight Errant. And for those who don't know Robert Stevens, he famously played Sherlock Holmes in the Billy Wilder film, The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes. And the stress of which, you know, he's on record as saying nearly killed him. He was literally hospitalized during the filming of that movie. But on top of that, he was also Jeremy Brett's best friend for almost all of Jeremy Brett's life. And this all kind of came to the forefront recently for me because, totally coincidentally, I've been listening to Quentin Tarantino's film criticism podcast, which is called The Video Archive. And one of the movies they discussed was The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes, which Quentin Tarantino loves. And frankly, he states pretty unequivocally that he thinks Robert Stevens is the greatest Sherlock Holmes ever to grace the screen.
Blasphemy.
And they never mention Jeremy Brett in the entire podcast. But in fairness to them, it's a podcast about movies, you know, not television. And when you hear them talk about Holmes, it's clear that they don't know what they're talking about. You know what I mean? They've never read the stories. They probably have never seen the show. But, you know, to each his own.
Usually people that say someone else is the greatest Holmes, they just haven't seen the Jeremy Brett show. That's been my experience.
Often true.
I will just jump in and say that he's not in the worst company because Mark Gatiss has gone on record to say The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes was a great inspiration for the Mark Gatiss's Sherlock series as well. So it's well admired.
It is a good movie. And again, if you read Stephen's book, Billy Wilder was a lot like Stanley Kubrick in the sense that basically they did 100 takes to get every little tiny thing right. And that's part of the reasons why Stevens had such an issue, is because not only did he have to lose like 100 pounds to be what Billy Wilder wanted him to be as Sherlock Holmes, but, he was on sleeping pills and, all these other things to help deal with it. And we'll come back to this, in later episodes, because he and Jeremy Brett ended up having conversations about this later in life. Robert Stevens basically told Jeremy, like, you got to be careful, man, because when you play a character whose entire existence is kind of a void of emotions, you can fall into that hole, And so actually towards the casebook phase of Sherlock, Robert Stevens' words really helped Jeremy kind of pull himself out of that muck and kind of come to grips with the character. But we'll come back to all of that at some point. Honestly, what I kind of wanted to do was read a couple little bits from this book, just because, frankly, because they were best friends, it's really interesting to hear Stevens talk about Jeremy Brett a little bit. And I found a couple of the stories touching. I'm not going to read much, but let me read just a paragraph or two from the book.
Cool.
So in this part of the book, they're talking about a production of Othello that they did. And it says, Jeremy Brett was the juvenile lead, and he quickly became my best friend. We have looked out for each other ever since those days. Jeremy was gorgeous, simply irresistible. Being a country bumpkin, I had never met anyone so elegant, so charming, so Etonian. He had, of course, been to Eton, and like my wife Tarn, Jeremy's family background was both impeccable and military. I was entranced. Jeremy snuggled up to me and to Tarn, and we became inseparable best friends. He was terribly good-looking and always suffered for it. At school, he was known as the Tart of Eton because he sang like Elizabeth Schwarzkopf, but was giving out all the wrong signals to unsuitable men who kept trying to pick him up. And I was the gentleman's relish who sat between him and the rather heavy old queers in the company. I wrinkled him out and we bonded as platonic friends, never sexual partners. We balanced up the classes between us. I moved in with Jeremy Brett over the Astoria ballroom. The lettering used to light up at night. A character called John Saunders, who was very sweet on Jeremy, had a room over the first A in Astoria, which he shared with 2 cats, and Jeremy had 2 rooms over the last A in Astoria. There were fights downstairs in the ballroom every weekend, not between me and Jeremy, who was and remains my dearest friend. Neither of us would go down there when these terrible fights were going on in case we were trampled to death. It wasn't a very glamorous life, but we were always screaming with laughter. We went regularly to the pub, of course, and every Friday night we'd treat ourselves to a strong hot curry. Often we'd have a chicken or a prawn vindaloo, and then the walk back to the ballroom would gradually turn into a race for the lavatory. Those vindaloos went straight through you like a dose of salts. In June 1955, Jeremy went off to make the King Vidor film War and Peace in Rome with Audrey Hepburn and Henry Fonda. I remember a letter of farewell from the book, and I gave it to him to read on the plane. He told me just how touched he was, and very kindly said to Tarn and I that if we could find our fares in the next 3 weeks' break, he would pay all our expenses. So we went to Rome, a city which I have adored unreservedly from that day until this, and we were billeted in the flat with Robert Graves' daughter, Diana. Jeremy, bless his heart, gave us pocket money from his own salary. Okay, so that was just one little story, but I thought it was great.
I think it's probably worth saying for people who don't know who he was married to Maggie Smith at one point, and is the father of the actor Toby Stephens also.
Yes, and actually I'm skipping ahead in the book to read the next story, and at this point in the book, he's married to Maggie Smith now, so you'll hear Maggie's name being dropped here in a moment. This next part takes place during a run of a play that they were both in together of Ingmar Bergman's Hedda Gabler, and there's a lot of interesting things about this. Like, they were both cast in it as different roles, and then they ended up swapping roles because it just played better that way, so that was very interesting. But here's from the book. Stephen says, during the run of Hedda, I had my 40th birthday. I booked the table patio in the Mediterranea in the Fulham Road and invited Chris Downs, Jeremy Brett, Nicola Paget, and others, including our dentist, Brian Kanarick. It was absolutely freezing cold. The waiters were not at their best. The food was not hot. Jeremy, at one point, popped over the road to Queen's Elm Street to bring a pile of old sweaters for everyone. Maggie was in one of her foulest moods, not without good reason, as the men around the table had been merrily drinking away all day, and we were already becoming quite noisy. We all went back to the house to warm ourselves up and drink some more. Jeremy Brett put on his own record of The Merry Widow and was kind enough to start singing along with himself. Maggie was very cross indeed as we all got drunker and drunker, and the boys were asleep upstairs. So there were reverberations from that evening for quite a while. And then the next line is, our married life was going downhill, but I won't read any more of that right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know how long they were married. I think like 9 years or something like that. But there's just one more little piece I want to read. And again, there are so many stories in this book. I recommend it because, frankly, Jeremy's name just pops up like every few pages. And it's really kind of fun, to kind of read all of Robert Stevens' adventures and then kind of hear Jeremy kind of just being there, popping up here and there.
Bringing sweaters and singing along to himself.
Exactly. And it's really kind of a fun read. But the last little piece I thought was great is this. And he says, I have never been professionally jealous of anyone, not Brando, not Laurence Olivier, not Robert De Niro, except once of Jeremy Brett. Jeremy is my oldest pal, and when he played Danilo in The Merry Widow on television with Mary Costa, the opera singer, he looked fantastic and he sang beautifully. And all this after a 3-month crash course only. He drove me absolutely crazy with jealousy. And then he actually goes on to badmouth Hugh Grant right after that about how he's like a no-talent hack. But anyway,
Colorful book.
it's such a great book. And honestly, so many other stories in there too. I didn't even read any of the stuff about the private life of Sherlock Holmes, but as he was getting ready to film that, he was doing a play or something with Laurence Olivier and Ronnie Pickup, Ronald Pickup, who plays Barrymore in Hound of the Baskervilles. And apparently Ronnie Pickup had bad teeth at the time, and air was kind of leaking out of the side of his mouth and sounding really terrible on stage or something. So Robert Stevens was like, look, I'm just going to pay for your dentist, okay? And he paid for him to get his teeth fixed. So
Is this the same dentist that got invited to dinner?
it probably is. It probably was, yeah. But there's a great photo in this book, which I think we should share, and I'll try to remember to share it with you, Luke, so you can post it on Twitter and you guys can put it on Facebook. It's a picture of Jeremy Brett as Robert Stevens' best man in his first marriage. And my God, he looks like he's 18. I mean, they look so young. And it's such a great photo, too. It's such a nice picture. So I'll send you guys that, and maybe we can share that. But anyway, kind of an aside, but I just thought, it's always nice to hear some stories about Jeremy, and frankly, from his best friend. I mean, how can you go wrong? Although, you can go wrong, and I'll tell you how. And that is, I also just read the autobiography of Anna Massey, and not as kind. Yeah, I mean, frankly, I was going to read some of hers, but they're all kind of tinged with kind of bitterness and unhappiness and anger, and I think their marriage was just never a great one.
If you want to balance out the man and the mystery, that's how you do it.
Maybe someday we'll get back to that, but I didn't want to bring it down, so,
But listening to that, I think it's incredible to hear the generation of British actors that Jeremy was a part of.
Yes.
Maggie Smith. So same generation.
And compared to.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
No, that book is a who's who of everybody working at the time. Roman Polanski's in there, I mean, everybody. And frankly, it's a tell-all kind of book. I mean, I honestly didn't think we'd talk about it this long, but it's he talks about every woman he slept with, most of them people Vanessa Redgrave, there's a big story in there about how Jeremy introduced him to Vanessa Redgrave, and they kind of had a tryst. And there's also a big story in there about how at one point he was very unwell, Robert Stevens was, and so he shacked up with Jeremy for a while, and everyone thought they were an item. And then he goes into great detail about how much he loves Jeremy, but he could never think of him that way. You know what I mean? This kind of a thing. So it's I don't know. It's such a fun book.
Salacious.
Yes, it's
Yeah,
quite a book.
Get out and buy a copy.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, since we're here, why don't we open up the mailbag and have a look at a few telegrams?
Let's do it.
So we've had a wide variety of emails come in over the last few months, and we will not get to all of them today, but we can jump around and do as many as we can. I just kind of want to say, we still do have a significant backlog of emails, I'm not going to lie, but I promise we will reply to all of them eventually. And, honestly, maybe we'll just do a special mailbag show someday where we just read the telegrams. I don't know. Have we ever talked about that before? Maybe maybe we have, but
No, we could try.
we could try doing something like
I
that.
would say we'll promise to try,
Right.
because there's a lot.
Well, and I mean, they're all amazing. I mean, all these emails have great comments, observations, personal histories, questions. I sometimes, if they're going to correspond to an upcoming episode, I do kind of index them in that way, so we have something to, talk about during that episode. But I don't know. We certainly do appreciate everyone who has taken the time to write, and we will get back to you. Pinky swear. Okay, first, and in no particular order, Elizabeth writes, regarding Lady Hilda's portrait from the second stain, I always thought her image was on the back of her calling card. The Google search says that they were sometimes included. Love the podcast. Keep up the great work, guys. Signed, Elizabeth. Thank you, Elizabeth. What she's talking about there is because at the beginning of the episode, she delivers her card to Holmes.
Right.
But I actually went back and I ran this one back, and the picture is not on there. And actually, Holmes actually flips it over so you can see the back too.
Yeah, I know. I went back to this came up previously,
Yeah.
and I feel like I really scanned over the whole episode at that point, but I was like, oh, maybe, but no, it's not there either. But I mean, maybe it was included in the thing that she gave to Mrs. Hudson, and Mrs. Hudson kept it aside. But
Well, or maybe it was an old business card that she had, and Holmes had an old one or something. But yeah, I don't know. I think it still remains a mystery. But either way, thank you, Elizabeth, for writing in.
Yeah.
A good friend of the show, Tim King, writes in to say, FYI, regarding compound family names, I'm changing my name on social media to Cadogan King. That is all. Brandy. Signed, Tim Cadogan King, Esquire. Excellent decision, Tim. I think we should all do this, but only if we all propagate the name Cadogan. So Luke Cadogan Holwerda, David Cadogan Ewell. Maybe we can get Stephen Cadogan Fry. I don't know.
But have we decided if it's hyphenated or not yet?
That is a whole nother episode that we're saving for another day.
yeah, we'll get to the hyphenated names later.
Yes. The next message is from Laura, who writes, Hey, folks.
Hey, Laura.
I just wanted to talk a minute about Abe Slaney's accent. I heard it as a lightly Irish accent. Given Chicago town's history with Irish immigrants and organized crime, it didn't seem unusual that Slaney might have a muddled American-Irish accent. What do you think? Signed, Laura. Thanks, Laura. Interesting. To be honest, I didn't hear that at all. But I didn't have a chance to go back and listen to this one. Did you go back and listen to it?
No, I didn't, but I've listened to it a lot, and I just hear Canadian.
Yeah.
I think we're just too close to Canada. Things like Chicago.
Yeah, there's a couple of giveaways. I mean, I guess it depends on what part of the world you're from. I mean, if she's more familiar with Ireland, maybe she's hearing something we're not.
Or maybe she's more familiar with the actor.
True.
And he doesn't typically have a little Irish on his accent, but
True.
I'm not hearing it, but we could listen again.
Yeah, I'd listen again, and he might have thrown in a few, because she's not wrong. There was a lot of kind of Irish organized crime and so on and so forth.
There's only one answer to this. We need to ask the actor himself, Eugene Lipinski.
Yes.
Let's get him.
That's a great idea.
I'm on it.
David will report back.
Yeah.
Okay. Next telegram. I think we've talked about this before, but we have a number of like incredibly talented artists that send in their work inspired by the Granada show.
Yes.
And we have telegrams from two today. And I wanted to make sure that we share some of their images because both are just frankly spectacular. So the first telegram comes from Bill Wood at heyimbill.com. And Bill writes, Hi, Gus and Luke. I wrote a couple of weeks back saying how much of a fan I am of your podcast. I ended up buying The Adventures on Blu-ray on your recommendation, and it is indeed worth the purchase. I need those facial expressions in as high a resolution as possible.
We know how you feel.
Absolutely. Also, the Jeremy Brett Sherlock Holmes poster I've been working on is nearly completed, and I thought I'd share it with you. For the aesthetic, I combined the Sidney Paget illustrations along with some Victorian-era line etching, and likely my own pop art influence as well. I hope you enjoy it. I also managed to sneak in a few Easter eggs from some of my favorite episodes/stories, and we'll likely add a few more before it's all wrapped up. Sincerely, Bill Wood. Well, I think we might have shared this one on Twitter already, but either way, this poster just looks amazing, and we'll definitely share it again. Thanks so much, Bill. Such wonderful work.
Yeah, really great to see new artwork being made for this show. I just the love for this show, I think, just keeps growing and growing.
Yeah.
And I see the blue carbuncle. I'm looking at it right now.
It's good to see how this series inspires people in their own talents to honor it in that way.
Yeah, and also we have a telegram from another artist named Benjamin Dewey, another fantastic poster artist, actually.
We know Benjamin.
Oh, yeah.
He's a known associate around here.
And he writes, Hello, fellows. I'm currently 2/3 of the way through my little project of celebrating the Granada series starring the almost impossibly wonderful Jeremy Brett. Each day, I do a black and white montage piece about 4x5 scale that includes my favorite aspects from each episode. I try not to spoil the endings and attempt to include Easter eggs for diehard fans. Since you two are the most dedicated appreciators that I've come across, it seemed only right to send a few words thanking you for added inspiration and the lovingly crafted audio deep dives that help me enjoy the series on a whole new level. The podcast is a treasure, and I'm happy to wait as long as needed for each new installment. Sincerely, B. Dewey. And he includes a link to his Instagram, which is instagram.com/Benjamin Dewey, Dewey, where you can see his coverage of each episode. And I don't know, these are just phenomenal. I mean, we'll share some.
If he's doing these every day, I mean,
Yeah.
they're very detailed.
Yeah. If I had that level of talent, oh my God.
Yes,
So yeah, let's make sure we share both of these talented gentlemen's links and art as well.
definitely will.
The next telegram comes from not a listener, but a follower on Facebook named Theodore, who happened to find us after we posted some photos from Jeremy in the Merry Widow, where he was singing alongside Mary Costa. And I just want to read a small portion of his note here. He said, "Good morning. I'm reaching out as most recently I discovered your Facebook page and the collection of photographs regarding the BBC production of The Merry Widow featuring Jeremy Brett and Mary Costa. What an absolute delight. Over the last 15 years, I have created a unique and treasured friendship with Mary, whom is now 93 and I 27. In my spare time, I research and archive her life and career as a soprano singer. Over a 2-year period, I created a biography scrapbook going to archives around the world and sent it to Mary as a surprise. It was declared a gift of a lifetime, and in many years to come, it will be left for the University of Tennessee to preserve and archive. Most exciting of all, when I turned 21, my mother and I flew to America and spent 3 magical days with Mary. As cliche as it sounds, it was a dream come true. I'd like to share a little comment from Mary directly in regards to the Merry Widow. It was Sir Laurence Olivier who persuaded Jeremy to sing with Mary in the BBC production, as he was nervous in regards to his singing voice. The production of The Merry Widow was often aired on Christmas Day and was favored by the royal family. Kind regards, Theodore." I just thought that was a neat note and, great to hear something directly from Mary Costa. So, glad Theodore took the time to write. Thanks, Theodore, and keep up the good work.
Yeah, wonderful project. Jeez.
The next note is from a great friend of the show, Pauline, who wrote in a few times while we were making the movie. And apologies, Pauline, I just haven't had time to reply, but I wanted to read some of her insights here. She writes, "I listened to the podcast of your 2022 trip to England and enjoyed it very much. I was in England this year during the coronation and stayed at the Langham. What a fantastic hotel. They had a special tea for the coronation. There was a huge crown in the Palm Court restaurant and a chocolate crown as part of the usual tea. I also stayed at the Midland in Manchester. That was wonderful too. Didn't get to have tea there as it was all booked up, but the breakfast buffet was magnificent. I also have the Midland Memories booklet and saw that bit about Jeremy staying there. Unfortunately, no one knew anything about him, which I thought was terrible. I wasn't able to find out which room he had or what restaurant he ate in, as there was no longer one called the Wyvern. The restaurants currently there are the Mount Street Dining Room and Bar, Adam Reed at the French, and the Tea Room. I'll just jump in, because when we were there, Luke, David, and I, there was nobody there that knew about the Wyvern either. I tend to think it was probably the larger dining hall, just based on the stories Jeremy's told over
Well,
the years.
David had a theory on that, didn't we?
Did I? What was my theory? I can't remember.
Well, we thought the room was the one right to the right of the reception desk because he could see down the hallway.
Yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
probably most likely. It's hard to know. I mean, they've completely refurbished that thing. I mean, the blueprints could have totally changed for all we know. But
Possible.
I don't know. If anyone out there knows which restaurant was Jeremy's restaurant of choice at the Midland, please reach out. That'd be great to know.
In regards to the Midland Memories book and there being no one at the Midland now who even remembers Jeremy, I did try and contact the lady who wrote the book, whose name escapes me at this moment.
Yeah.
I apologise, but unfortunately, she passed only a few days after our trip to the Midland, so we were never able to connect, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And to that point, I mean, when we stopped in, nobody knew anything about it either, except for there was a guy that they're like, there's this guy that's been here for like 30 years. And so they went and got him for us, but he was the only person. So
And he actually started working there after the series had ended, so
Yeah.
right,
he might have been there 30 years, but the series
Yeah.
ended 30 years ago, so unfortunately.
exactly.
Yeah. But we did try. But Pauline goes on to say, I thought you might be interested to know that I tried to get a blue plaque for Jeremy's apartment house at 47 Clapham Common, and I was told that he was nominated in 2016 and was turned down because, quote, we receive many more suggestions than we can act on in the area of stage and screen. And apparently this came from Howard Spencer, senior historian of blue plaques at the English Heritage Group in London. She says, He also said that it must be 10 years before they can be nominated again. That makes it 2026.
Mm.
To say I was angry and upset is putting it mildly. I don't understand why this wonderful, talented man can't get any recognition. No BAFTA, no Emmy, not for him or the Granada series, no knighthood or French Legion of Honor because he died. At least we have your wonderful podcast. Keep up the good work, Pauline. Well, thank you so much, Pauline.
Well, now we know who to blame, Howard. We're coming for you.
Well, 2026 is not that far away. Let's keep talking, and maybe we can make a big push for that blue plaque when the time comes. We're still interested in looking into the star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. We just haven't had the time. And frankly, it's just going to probably come down to money. But it's on our list.
But this year is the 40th anniversary. There's a lot we could be doing. So there's a lot we can work on.
Yeah.
And
Howard, if you think I'm taking a no from David Burke, I'm not going to take a no from you.
You made a powerful enemy, Howard.
You have. I've now got your address. You're in trouble.
Yes. Well, we'll keep working on it. And actually, Pauline did mention the French Legion of Honor. And actually, you're right. He never received it because he passed away before the ceremony. But as far as I recall, he was scheduled to receive it. And, at least he was aware of the fact that he was getting it. So even though he never did, at least he knew it was afoot. And, that was, if I'm recalling it correctly, I think that was thanks to the Sherlock Holmes Society of France and Thierry St. Jonas, who was the head of that organization. So, yeah, I don't know. At least Jeremy knew.
Yeah, it's something.
Thank you, Pauline. Yeah. We've had a couple of emails regarding relics ideas. One from David Sargent reads, "Guys, I'm a massive fan of your work and I love the relics, but can't you make the blanket? Man, that would be cool." Signed, David.
Yeah, David is actually working on the blanket. He's going to start learning how to knit
and crochet.
And he's going to make it from scratch.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we'd all love to have that blanket.
Yeah.
But that seems like a
tough one.
Like a big one.
I don't know. Maybe there's some company that you give them a pattern and they'll do whatever you want. And maybe it's, cheap labor somewhere and we could have it done. But short of that, I'm not sure.
We could promote some cheap labor on the show.
If you can do a Persian slipper, Luke, you can do a blanket.
Yes.
It's still on the list. We've got a long list of things we'd like to do, and it is on the list. I think someone else asked if we could do curtains, and that seems
That's
like
getting
a stretch.
tough.
But we'll see.
Well, another prop request came in from Julia, who wrote, "Dear Gus and Luke, could you help me with one relic that isn't in your sets? I really want to obtain a hooked cane like the one Holmes habitually uses in the series. I believe you mentioned some manufacturers of those types of canes in your previous episodes, but I can't find that at the moment. I believe many would like to own such a thing, so if you could refer us to a shop, it would benefit not only me, especially if it's a store in Europe. Thanks again, Julia."
In terms of shops, I don't really know. I think you'd have to go to antique stores, but you can check eBay and Etsy.
I mean, it's easy to get one that is similar, but finding that exact one, we have not, I don't think, found it.
No, we haven't found the exact one. The thing to look for is just look for Victorian walking stick or cane.
Yeah.
They will come up, but you also get a lot of modern replicas, so you kind of have to just, buyer beware kind of a situation. But they're out there.
And I mean, if we could ever find one, I think we could probably replicate the handle, and then the stick is just a stick. So I don't know. It's something on the list, as Luke said.
I think it wouldn't be terribly difficult to reproduce that, even without having it in hand, just because it's not overly detailed. It would just be a case of casting it out of silver. It wouldn't be the kind of thing we could stamp out easily.
Sure.
I know the whereabouts of an original stick from the series, but it wasn't Jeremy's. But we'll leave it at that.
Oh, that's right. Well, we don't have to leave it at that. We can tell that story.
So, as you guys are aware, we have interviewed costume designer Esther Dean.
Yeah.
And she's in possession of a few artifacts from the series, one of which is Lady Frances Carfax cane from the disappearance of Lady Frances Carfax, which, as we all know, has the head of a goose at the top end of it. I think it's a goose.
Yeah. Well, and if I wasn't ripped off on eBay, I have the band from the Hound of the Baskervilles walking stick.
I think you were ripped off, unless it was like
I don't know.
a number 2 or something.
I did some research into that, and we could talk about that another time. But I do think some of the things that were being sold by that person were authentic. But what we should do is just, for our declining years, we do a whole line of Granada, Jeremy Brett, Sherlock Holmes walking sticks, and it'll be like when you go to the shop at like
like
Voldemort's wand shop or whatever. Yeah, lightsabers or wands at the theme
yeah.
parks or whatever. and then we'll just have a whole line. We can do Watson's stick. We could do.
I'll get my dog to chew on one of them.
I think declining years is going to be involve two things: sticks and pipes.
Yeah.
And maybe hats. So the next note comes from Rosalind, and she writes, I have recently discovered your podcast. Jeremy Brett's Sherlock Holmes was the first version I ever saw as a 10-year-old. I rewatch my favorite episodes every year. While my brother and family are all big fans of the show, most of my friends are sadly unaware of the series and are generally put off by its age. I am slowly educating them one by one. When I read that, I like to think there was like a bludgeon involved.
A stick involved?
Cane.
Yeah.
I'm educating them by force.
I am originally from the north of England, but moved to Surrey near London nearly a decade ago. Since listening to your podcast, I have once again binged the series and have had such a joy in recognizing so many locations in the stories, both in London and Surrey. I was wondering what your favorite non-Holmes Brett performances are. Mine are probably The Good Soldier, Love's Labour's Lost, Number 10, and On Approval, but there are so many to choose from. Also, would you ever consider discussing non-Holmes Brett performances? It seems very sad that soon you will run out of episodes. Thanks again for the podcast, from one Brettian to another, Rosalind. Well, thank you so much, Rosalind. Favorite non-Sherlock Jeremy Brett performances? Who wants to go first?
I mean, I'll just say My Fair Lady because it's out there. Just because it's just like it's a classic movie. It's just a big, I don't know, it's a big thing to be involved in anyway. I mean, I know it's not his greatest singing performance, but I think that's a pretty classic one.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's got to be Rebecca. Because I think it's considered to be the go-to dramatization of a classic book.
See, to me, that's a weird one because he is great in it, but I'm such a big fan of the Hitchcock version that it's so hard for me not to see, Olivier in the part when I watch it. But I don't know. I have seen that one many times and it grows on me every time. I love all the Shakespeare stuff. I'm not going to lie. Merchant of Venice, Love's Labour's Lost. I think he's amazing in Picture of Dorian Gray.
Mm-hmm.
And I think kind of that part was almost made for him, which is kind of funny because he actually played Dorian Gray himself when he was a younger man, which I can't see at all. But in Picture of Dorian Gray, he just really shines in that, and it's such a good production. Thank you very much, Rosalind. Great question.
I will say, in regards to talking about non-Sherlockian performances by Jeremy.
Yeah.
Advertised for the part of the show that I'm involved in, but if you listen to the interviews we do with a lot of these guys, John Gorrie, for example, who directed Jeremy and the Merry Widow, we do talk about a lot of his non-Sherlockian performances because a lot of these guys that we talk to have worked with him on other productions.
For sure.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd see us getting into maybe a different separate podcast after this one's done could just be the Jeremy Brett non-Sherlock Holmes podcast, and we could talk about a lot of those things. I kind of foresee what will happen after this podcast is what we might do is try to do some kind of coverage on the stories that were not filmed, and kind of maybe romanticize a little bit about what those would have been like had they been made by Granada with Jeremy Brett, and maybe get some other folks to commentate on that as well. But even once we get done with the episodes, we have so much content. We have so many interviews, so many people that we've talked to and still have yet to talk to. And so many little tidbits, not unlike the thing today that we're covering.
Yeah.
We'll have more to talk about once this is over, but...
and at the rate we move, we'll have stories for years.
It'll probably be a decade before we get there. Anyway, Andrew writes in to say, during your interview with Clive Francis, the lead makeup artist figured heavily into your discussion of his portrayal in The Man with the Twisted Lip, and the thought occurred to me, was she the person behind all those different looks of Jeremy and the rest of the cast? For example, I always wondered if Jeremy's look is an homage to the stars of early films. Indoor lighting almost gives his face an iridescent hue. All this is to say, have you thought of reaching out to her for an interview? It would be an interesting perspective, seeing as how she spent as much time as anyone with these artists and was responsible for portraying their characters from the makeup chair. Love your podcast, as I'm desperately trying to catch up on your stellar analysis and appreciation of the series. Signed, Andrew. David, this one's for you. What do you think? Glenda Wood, right?
Well, yeah, Glenda Wood and Sue Milton were the two main makeup artists throughout the series.
Yeah.
Put it this way, there's probably no one you listeners haven't thought about that we should interview that we haven't thought about ourselves. And I think it's quite fun to keep some of our interviews a secret. So we'll say this answer isn't to say that we have, and this answer isn't to say that we haven't.
And this answer isn't to say that we won't if we haven't, and we are always trying our best.
Or we will if we have.
We're trying to speak to everyone. Trust me. The list is long.
But we could answer, or we could speak to the other part of that question, which is, I'd say it's sort of unlikely that the makeup person was in control of the look of Jeremy throughout the show.
Yeah.
Typically, they still work with the director or production designer or someone like that.
Well, true.
But also to the point, though, the makeup artist does spend a lot of time with the actors. In some cases, more than most people, just because depending on how much makeup is involved, they're sitting right in their face.
And Jeremy was a force of nature, so if he had a look or a type of makeup or a style, I'm sure that he knew what to ask for.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, as to his iridescent hue, I kind of think, frankly, that's just Jeremy's skin. I mean, I think he just...
Well, he was painted white for the first couple episodes.
Well, that was the whole... that's a question that would be fun to ask somebody, but it's like, for those who don't know, he showed up to the first episode in his own makeup that he had put on himself with like pale skin and gaunt, rings under the eyes. I think he had a false nose. And director Paul Annette was just like, Jeremy, what is this? We don't need any of that. We just need you and your face. And, thank God he said that to him, because that could have been like the show gets canceled after one episode if that's how it turned out. But no, I mean, Glenda Wood is a talent. And just so everyone out there does know, she did write a little article about her work with Granada for the Granada Land website a few years back. She didn't talk about Sherlock in that article, but it is a nice little piece. So if you want to hear from Glenda before you might hear from her here, you could always check out that article on granadaland.com.
I think there's also something to the character of Sherlock Holmes in sort of the whiteness of his skin, in that he wouldn't have been one to be outside too much unless he had to be, and he certainly wasn't one to be taking holidays.
Right. So probably not a lot of tan.
Yes.
Most of the British people don't see the sun very often, though, do you?
Not this time of year. Before we draw the correspondence to an end, Gus and Lee, would you mind if I jump in with one of my own?
Yeah, for sure. What do you got?
Do it.
So, as some of our listeners may know, we've been in touch with Susie Reynolds of Leighton Hall, or as fans of the show might call it, Riddlingthorpe Manor from The Dancing Men.
Right.
And I got in contact with her this week about various things to catch up on, one of which being just to ask her if she'd had any Sherlock Holmes fans visit Leighton Hall over the summer. And this was her response. We haven't had many Sherlock Holmes fans as day visitors, but we do have a couple who have booked a wedding next year who are massive fans and made it clear they'd only booked on the strength of The Dancing Men. So that should be an interesting one. History doesn't relate whether or not they are dressing up, though. I thought an interesting venue for a wedding, especially considering the storyline of the episode itself.
Yeah.
Double murder,
but very, deep, devoted, true love.
Yeah. I'm not going to lie, I kind of want to attend that wedding. I wonder if we could invite ourselves or just crash it. But no, that's great.
We could leave little markings around, little messages.
You should talk to her about that and be like, look, if somebody isn't already doing it, please leave some messages in chalk.
At the very least, there'd be interesting photos for me to put up on the locations website.
Definitely, yeah.
Yes.
Nice, professionally done wedding photos.
Well, who knows? Maybe the bride and groom are listeners to our show.
Well, if they are, I hope they'll send us a tiny little square of cake when they're done.
We should just add, if ever in the area of Lancaster, which is where Leighton Hall is, do call in on Leighton Hall and mention us to Susie Reynolds, who will be happy to give you the Dancing Men tour.
And a piece of chalk?
Just not on the front door, please.
Yes. Okay, well, David, it's been great having you here. I'm sure this will not be the last time. And, Hound is the next episode on the slate, and it is a big one. It is a very big one. And it's going to take some time for us to prepare that one. And, I just wanted to, make sure everybody knew that, we're still working on the movie. It's not quite done. But on top of that, we have been working on Hound. We actually have some amazing interviews for it already in the can. And, we'll have that for you as soon as we can. But we won't stay away too long again. And if Hound is going to take a while, we'll certainly be back in the meantime with some things you'll enjoy, not the least of which will be June Wyndham Davies next. So when we get to Hound, it's going to be a monster. It actually, it might end up being our first 2-part podcast. It's going to be that big.
I think so. or our first 5-hour podcasts.
I've been working hard on guests, guys. I can promise you that.
Yes.
Well, and the ones we already have are going to blow people's minds. So it's going to be fun. And I just wanted to say thank you guys. Thanks everybody for sticking with us.
Yes.
It's really wonderful to be back.
Definitely.